Establishing central influence, this pawn advance immediately contests the core squares and opens lines for bishops. Developing the knight to f6 promptly contests central space and prepares for kingside castling, a flexible start. Seizing central space and preparing a queenside expansion, c4 challenges black's knight's influence. Solidifying the center, this move prepares to develop the bishop and offers a robust pawn structure, though it slightly restricts the queen's bishop. Developing this knight asserts more central presence, reinforcing the pawn structure and preparing for further piece activity. Challenging the center immediately, a bold stride aiming to unbalance the position. Solidifying the center and preparing for kingside castling is a standard, sound approach after black's challenge. Solidifying the center and preparing for a robust pawn structure, this piece repositions to a flexible square, supporting allies and eyeing central influence. Developing the bishop here prepares for queenside expansion, while keeping an eye on black's central pawn structure. Surrendering the center to establish a temporary pawn majority on the queenside presents an interesting strategic gamble. Opening the e-file and preparing to reclaim the c4 pawn, this move subtly enhances central control and pawn structure. Excellent, black immediately challenges the central pawn's protection, seeking to untangle the knight and potentially reroute it to a more active square. Clearing the center, this bishop exchange aims to unlock diagonals and secure better piece activity in the ensuing middle game. Recapturing on f4 surrenders the knight's active central outpost, creating potential pawn weaknesses around black's king. Opening the e-file for your rook now becomes a real possibility, pressuring black's weakened queenside structure. Developing the bishop to an active diagonal immediately challenges white's central pawn structure and aims to unburden the d-pawn. Preparing a kingside fianchetto to challenge black's central control and potentially open diagonals for the bishop. Safeguarding the monarch is paramount, initiating a vital defense against potential middle-game threats. Castling secures the king and connects the rooks for future action along the open files. Recentralizing the knight after its initial skirmish aims to fortify the kingside and prepare for potential pawn pushes. Focusing the queen on the e-file now creates pressure on black's kingside while preparing potential pawn pushes. Expanding queenside mobility by preparing bb7 opens up the long diagonal and challenges white's central pawn structure. Securing control of the open d-file now becomes a priority, potentially setting up future pressure. Developing the bishop to b7 prepares to challenge white's central control along the long diagonal and supports a potential queenside pawn advance. Opening the c-file seeks active pressure and potential infiltration. Fulfilling the queen's latent potential, this maneuver readies for central engagement and bolsters the kingside's defensive network. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure sets the stage for gradual queenside expansion and potential pressure. Reinforcing the d-file pawn chain, this prepares a potential pawn thrust later on, while keeping central influence. Displacing the knight to e5 aims to exploit the weak c6 square and potentially launch an attack towards black's castled king. Challenging the center's rigidity by opening a diagonal for the queen and bishop. Asserting dominance on the queen side, this knight's repositioning prepares a disruptive fork. This capture instantly opens up the c-file, creating a dynamic battle for central influence and potential queen access. Unleashing the knight to a potent outpost, this move immediately targets the queenside structure and prepares to seize open files. Sacrificing the bishop opens lines, but opens your king to danger too. This queen sacrifice opens a critical diagonal, aiming to disrupt black's kingside pawn structure and potentially create mating threats. Reclaiming central influence and preparing to challenge white's rook on the d-file offers black active counterplay. Shifting the bishop to b3 aims to eye the queenside diagonals and potentially support a kingside pawn push, but sacrifices control of the critical c5 square. Simplifying the position by trading queens initiates an endgame, potentially favoring black's bishop pair. Opening the f-file now creates immediate pressure on black's weakened pawn structure and potential king safety issues. Reclaiming centralized knight control signifies a subtle shift toward pawn structure consolidation, solidifying the pawn structure and preparing for future central advances. Securing the queenside expansion, this pawn push prepares to challenge white's central space and potential knight outpost. Securing the monarch's safety becomes paramount as the game ventures into less predictable territory. Repositioning the king to a more central and active square in this simplified position can prepare for potential pawn advances. Liberating the f-pawn injects forward dynamism, aiming to crack open lines around black's king and exploit the open file. Reclaiming central influence with the bishop, though it might become a target. Breaking open the f-file offers white attacking potential against the black king. Sacrificing material to untangle the pieces and activate the rook is a bold gamble for a better position. Forces the black king into a compromised position, aiming to exploit the discovered threats and open files.